Hi everybody, welcome to our first online class. As I mentioned in our intro video, this will be an asynchronous online class, and please provide me with some feedback and suggestions on this video so I will have the chance to alter the content and to cover the things in accordance with your learning. Please follow the video well because there will be some surprise questions maybe throughout it and you are expected to answer them. And this week we are covering methods and ethics of research topic. Let's firstly start with ethics. Most probably, if we were in the class now, I would ask your ideas on what ethics is. Actually, this is a word we are using mostly in our daily lives. And it has a really important basis, especially in our occupation psychological counseling. Actually, ethics are the predetermined guidelines to protect participants to get harm from any research or any intervention. And as we see here in your slides, ethics in its essence and especially in research guarantee the safety of the participants. And participants may be human or animals, as you know from physiological psychology studies. Firstly, experiments were done on animals, and still biopsychology and neuroscience research focuses on animals to derive conclusions about the human nature as well. And for both humans and animals, there are some guidelines that need to be met. And before a research is conducted, it needs to be seen by the ethics committee before it gets to go ahead. Actually, here, this ethics committee is important. For example, every university has an ethics committee, and for example, Metho also has human subjects and research ethics committee. And before we conduct any research, we need to get permission from that ethics committee. Okay, so before conducting any research, to guarantee, to ensure that participants or animals will not be harmed by those research situations, and permission from the ethics committee should be taken. Okay, and research must, for animals, ensure that they are protected, and the pain, if given to animals in these research processes, must be really minimized, and the animals must be well cared for. These are the guidelines for animal research. And for human participants, the basic principle is that there must be no physical or psychological harm to the participants. Okay, these are really important. And let's briefly go over the ethics in human research. There are two important points here. One of them is this experimental role. Okay, here the researcher must always act in a professional manner. If you are collecting data with paper pencil, or if you are conducting some laboratory experiments, you should be sure that participants will be at your focus, they will not get any harm, and as a researcher, you need to keep your limits and distance with the participants. And here, where we will go through in more details, the participant rights are listed. These are confidentiality, voluntary participation to the research, withdrawal rights from the research, informed consent, deception in research, and debriefing. These are the important situations if you are doing any research with human participants. Okay. And let's go briefly over what these participant rights are in details. Actually, these are the participants' rights in research, but in your counseling theories or group counseling theories or principles and techniques of counseling courses, you will see that most of these rights also apply to the counseling process, either individual sessions or group counseling sessions. You will see that your clients have rights which are almost similar to these, okay, correspond to these. Okay, let's start with confidentiality. Actually, maybe you have heard this. This means that everything regarding the participant, his or her identification information, etc., they will be kept only for the sake of the research and not be shared with anyone else. They will be kept as secret, confidential documents, okay? And actually the means why and which confidentiality is to be established and maintained should be described to the participants at the beginning of the study, in order to make the participants feel themselves safe and secure, so their answers will not interfere with the results of the research. Because if they feel themselves safe that their identity and their answers will not be shared with third parties, they will be more honest in their answers. And voluntary participation. You cannot force anyone to participate in your research by force. Participants have the right to participate in a research on a voluntary basis, okay? You cannot do any pressure on them, so you can only have participants in your research if they are volunteered for it. And also, in accordance with this, they have withdrawal rights at any stage of the research, either being done experimentally or either doing in daily life by just answering questions. They have the right to leave a study at any stage, regardless of the possible effects on the results. The effects of the results of a research is just it just not needs to be the concern of the researcher. It's not the participant's job. So these rights should be transferred to the participants as well, and they should know that they can leave at any part of the research if they are feeling themselves uncomfortable, if they don't want to participate anymore. Okay, the other principle of ethics and actually the rights of the participants is informed consent. This is before the study gets started, you should inform your participants about the nature of the study, what you are studying, what you are aiming, and if the participant wants to give some contribution to this research, then okay, but of course after knowing the content and the nature of the research. And also we have this informed consent for children and adolescents below 18, and you should inform them, but also you should inform their parents, and they should give you permission for their children to participate in that specific research area. Another right and basic principle of research is deception in research. Okay, sometimes the researchers may do little deceptions in their researches, but this is only permitted if the results would be confounded and if the participants had much information before taking part in the study. And the researcher must ensure that participants do not unexpectedly suffer distress, and if any distress is observed, the study must be stopped immediately. And another important thing that we are now covering is debriefing as participants' right. Participants should be debriefed exactly after the study. Actually, debriefing occurs after the completion of the study, and participants are told about the results and conclusions of the study after the study's results have been found. And any erroneous beliefs about the study are corrected. If the participants have such beliefs about the study, they should be corrected, and especially if there was any deception involved. And participants should be informed of the availability of and how to obtain counseling if they feel they need it after the research or after the role they took in the research situation. So here comes your question. Have you ever joined a research study in which you were informed about these participant rights? Actually, when I was in Boğaziçi University, the psychology department was conducting experiments, and they were taking students from all of the departments, and they were saying us that if you participate in this experimental study or laboratory study, you will get 1 point bonus. And we were getting in line and we were trying to get that bonus. So I participated in lots of studies. In those studies, research areas, you can either fill out a questionnaire, paper pencil questionnaire, in which you are asked about your emotions, the way you are coping with stress, your depression, anxiety level, or let's say your school readiness, or your procrastination tendency, etc. Sometimes researchers want to get knowledge by these questionnaires and on any topic that they are interested to research. And in that situation, you fill out the forms. But sometimes there are some laboratory settings in which experiments are conducted. You are, for example, exposed to a treatment. Let's say you have a depressive tendency, and they take participants with depressive tendencies, and they divide them the researchers into 2 groups. One group takes an intervention of mindfulness, they do regular breath exercises, and the other group doesn't take an intervention. And afterwards, their depressive levels after the interventions are measured again, and the researchers try to understand if there is a difference after the mindfulness treatment or not. Okay, this is experimental study. An example, you will see those in more details in your research methods course. So, think of yourself and consider if you ever participated in such a research study. And try to remember if you were informed about these participant rights, or if your parents had to sign any paper to allow you to participate in such a research study. If so, what are those, or what were those? Okay, I'm expecting you to write your answers in this YouTube video, so we will be able to see our answers. Okay, let's go on. We briefly understand the general structure of ethics of research, and this should be valid. if you are working in clinical psychology, counseling psychology, or physiological psychology. These are universal guidelines that all of the researchers should follow. And but since we are in this physiological psychology course, let's try to understand how research is done in this specific physiological psychology area. You know that in our first lesson we talked about the words used interchangeably with physiological psychology. Neuroscience, biopsychology, and physiological psychology actually compensate for each other and they feed each other. So we will focus on physiological psychology research now, but we should note that neuroscience and biopsychology also aim to study the human brain as physiological psychology does. Okay, and the research in this physiological psychology area aims to observe and record brain activity. So as a result of these research studies, we are able to understand how the structure of the brain is and how the brain activity takes place there. Okay, and for understanding nature and the activity of human brain, of course, in a way, we should visualize it, right? And in order to visualize what's going on around there, you should give a stimulation to the brain from outside. And after you stimulate specific areas of brain, then you would do some measurements in order to visualize what's happening in which lobe, in which part of the brain. Okay? And for this, generally contrast radiography, computerized axial tomography scan, we say CT scan, nuclear magnetic resonance, positron emission tomography, functional magnetic resonance imaging, magnetoencephalography, and transcranial magnetic stimulation techniques are used. But most common ones, which you can also hear and sometimes may be exposed to in real life, are mostly these: contrast radiography, computerized axial tomography scan, positron emission tomography, let me write this for you, and fMRI is again among the most frequent ones. And now we will briefly explain these for you to have some information about what are the basic methods to visualize human brain structure and brain activity. Let's firstly talk about contrast radiography. Maybe you or your parents already have been exposed to this, I don't know. Try to remember, maybe you have someone. Actually, they are injecting a substance into the body to absorb the X-rays. And actually this is used for examining the brain function, brain structure, as cerebral angiography, beyin anjiyosu we say in Turkish. Okay, and this is a kind of contrast radiography, and to do this a contrast medium is inserted into a brain vessel. This is the substance injected into the vessel, and the aim is to observe the circulatory system while performing an X-ray. And this technique is very useful to locate vessel injuries and brain tumors. And The second one is CT scan, computerized axial tomography scan. And through this scan, experts can see the whole brain structure. During the test, patients lie down in the middle of a big cylinder. The patient holds still and an X-ray tube, and the receptor takes the photographs. And all this information is transmitted to a computer, and once all of the information has been transferred to the computer, it is possible to make a three-dimensional representation of the brain. So as a result of this technique, we are able to have an information about the whole brain structure. And the other two of them for visual human brain stimulation and visualization are positron emission tomography, PET. And this provides brain activity images instead of brain structure images. Here we are after giving some explanations to how the brain activates under specific stimulations. And here, this is how one can observe which neurons are active at a given time during the different activities. Actually, most probably you have seen this image for meditation studies. They are measuring the brain activities and how the neurons are getting activated, for example, during meditation. Maybe you have seen images like green area, red, blue area. These show the activation of the brain and which stimulation, which activity given from the external world to the organism activates which part of the brain. Okay? And lastly, we will talk about functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI. This is a widely used technique, especially in mindfulness and meditation studies. These MRIs offer an image of the increase in the amount of oxygen present in the brain's blood, and thus it can successfully measure again brain activity. And if we compare it to the PET, since both of them measure brain activity, just fMRI has 4 advantages when compared to PET scanning. Doctors don't have to inject the patient with anything, because in PETs, doctors inject radioactive fluid oxyglucose, and in fMRI, it provides both functional and structural information. It offers a better spatial resolution, and it again provides three-dimensional images of the entire brain. With fMRIs, we both have information about the structure of the brain and the activities involved as a result of the stimulation provided to the human brain. Okay, and lastly, you have one more question. Have you or someone close to you ever been exposed to any of these human brain visualization methods? How was your experience? Mention about it, please, under the comment parts under this YouTube video. Okay, stay healthy, keep calm, and let's catch up with our care. Bye bye.